Now I'm opening space for questions and answers. And before we start, I would like to please kindly ask for our speakers to be really sharp and short because we are kind of tight with time. Yes.
Okay. Right, thank you. Two questions. The first question to Dr. Gilbert. First of all, I don't know where he is. Thank you so much for a really excellent lecture. My question relates to the destruction, the motive behind the destruction of healthcare facilities and healthcare practitioners. Now, you mentioned, of course, understand that this aids in the genocide of a whole people. If you deprive them of any means of recovering from the damage that you've already done, then you can make sure that even more of them are dead. But my question really is, do you care to speculate on the thing you mentioned, which is the sadistic aspect of this, the depravity that the Israeli military have shown? That's the first question to Dr. Gilbert. Shall I ask the second one, or when he's finished, I ask the second?
I can take the first one.
No, sure, because there's a
Thank you so much for the question. It was, if I could elaborate on the sadism in the attacks on healthcare. Yes, I can. It's very easy. We know from the control posts controlling the influx of humanitarian aid to Gaza. By the way, humanitarian aid is non-negotiable. It's part of human rights. It's been used in Gaza as a negotiation card, which is by itself horrible. But we know from these people who have been exposed to the Israeli control by Kogat, which is the force, the part of the Israeli forces in control of the fence, it's not a border, the fence around Gaza. They systematically took out very critical drugs, antibiotics, third generation, which you need for the complicated wound infections in Gaza. I'm sure my colleague from Doctors Without Borders can contest to that. They took out anesthetics. You all heard about amputations being done without anesthetics. I'd like to underscore that my colleagues in Gaza, they are just as ethical as my colleagues in the University Hospital in Norway. We don't perform major surgery without anesthesia, full stop. But there may be procedures, in particular in children, where we would have liked to give some pain relief, like a debridement or a dressing, which has been impossible in Gaza because the Israelis take out anesthetic drugs. Sadism has nothing to do with military gains. The third, they have been picking out equipment critically important for midwives, like headlights to conduct deliveries. When they went into one of the key delivery hospitals in Rafah, the Israeli soldiers had, you know, the thing you do to cut wires. And they cut the wires between the ultrasound probe and the ultrasound machine. Why do you need ultrasound when you are conducting deliveries? Because you need to see where the fetus is, and that's a very important tool. Why would you cut that cable? And you know that they left the premature babies in their incubator without oxygen and heat. All of this, I can give you a long, long list, and so can all the other medical doctors, in particular the Palestinian doctors, which are absolutely not related to any security measure or any military gain. It's pure suffering. And when you inflict suffering on another people, it is because you are sadistic. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we just proceed to a second question, and then if there's time for somebody else, we can come back. Yes, thank you very much, because we are really...
Thank you very much. First, I want to commend all those who made presentations on this particular larger theme, and in particular the doctors who made presentations. I may be wrong, but I think there were 3 doctors in all who made presentations, because their presentations carry a message which is different in some respects from what all the other presentations have conveyed to us. There's an authenticity, there is such a high degree of truth in what they convey, and that I think has a great impact. If you look at all the presentations, I just single out one of these doctors, mainly because his name is quite well known in my own country. This is Dr. Matt Gilbert. He has been featured a few times on Malaysian television for the work he has done in Gaza and his contributions. And I'm so glad that I took part in this tribunal, if only because I've been able to see him in person. And that I think is something which a lot of my friends in Malaysia, they would want to hear about this. It's had such a great impact. And that brings me to the main point that I want to make. What can we do? That call came from some of the presentations, continue with the resistance. But I think this resistance will have greater meaning if, let us say, within the next few days or weeks, major healthcare, medical associations from different parts of the world spoke up. People will take notice. I'm not saying that it is going to bring about the change that we want to see, but I think the impact will be great. And it's a shame. And I want to repeat this, the word has been used before. It's such a shame that the vast majority of organizations and institutions linked to the medical profession, they have kept quiet in the face of this terrible injustice. An injustice which has undermined the integrity of the profession in every sense. And I really hope that this tribunal would at least compel these organizations to come out and say that this is what has been happening and we cannot take it anymore, because it's still going on. This is something which we would all applaud if it can happen, if the doctors can come up and speak of this thing, and international organizations that are linked to the medical profession, apart from individual national organizations. I think they have a responsibility. And this is what we should work towards.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll have time for the conclusion on Sunday. I can see that you're extremely stressed out, which I completely understand, and that's one of the reasons we're here today, all together. Can you ask a question, or I'll just proceed to the next jury member?
You know, I don't have a question. I thought that I knew, and I've seen many of these photos, these videos, and even the doctors on alternative media, and but still being here, listening firsthand was really shaking experience. I thought I knew. Now I know that I know nothing. And sorry for my being emotional, but it was harder than me. Thank you.
very much. I will proceed to the next jury member and ask if you have a question, or should I proceed? No questions. Thank you. Do you have a question?
I just want to emphasize what was just told. I've been following the Palestinian problem since 40 years, and especially recently, of course. I thought I knew everything. And what I hear today is more than I ever knew, and I thank so much the doctors to give us all these terrible details. I also wonder how we can have this information really given to large audience. I suppose that's where Richard Falk will manage to do something, because this is very so important and disseminated also in the medical, among the medical community. Thank you.
First, I want to thank this panel in particular. They've been very moving and detailed presentations, and I thank them for that. I do have very quick questions, not comments. And these questions are addressed to anyone who would care to answer them. First, what does the historical record show in times of war? What the deliberate targeting of healthcare workers, of doctors, of hospitals show? How does that compare to other wars throughout? For example, we see in Ukraine, which has been obviously longer than Gaza war, the number is 733 killed as of 3 weeks ago of children, and about 2,300 injured, compared to almost the recorded one, over 30 times that in the case of Gaza, 21,000 at least, 40,000, as someone mentioned, orphans, and tens of thousands injured, amputated, and so on and so forth. And when we talk about out-of-school children, that's not even in Ukraine. Everybody is 700,000 been denied education. And that goes into the mental health situation. So I would like to see if the experts can tell us what the historical record is. Secondly, we have a section that we need to report on which says complicity. I would like to get a list from the experts in the medical field, the governments that have been complicit, you've been in the field, in trying either to deny or trying to somehow push you back in your field, which governments and which associations, which syndicates, which organizations, particularly in the medical field. Dr. Gilbert talked a little bit about it. He condemned them. I'd like to get a list if possible, including obviously the role of the Red Cross, International Red Cross, American Red Cross, if they have been cooperative, non-cooperative, if they have been called into this, if they have been pushed around, if they have been complicit in any way, shape, or form, as well as I said, the governments. Finally, I'd like to get recommendations from the experts on what they would recommend in this area, so we can look at them. Thank you so much, and if you care to comment, please do so.
Dr. Javid, are you in the mood to answer, if it's okay for you? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I think it's difficult for me to answer by virtue of my work with Doctors Without Borders, so we can't really comment on the other things. I would say about healthcare, attacks on healthcare. In my personal experience, having worked in Sudan, in Syria, in Tigray, in South Sudan, all during wars, it's a common enough phenomenon. So the destruction of the healthcare system in Tigray and in Sudan right now, even in Haiti with conflict there that's between armed groups, we see about 70 to 80% of lack of hospital closures in the capital of Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. I think for me, what was different in Gaza, and this is my 7th or 8th war now, I worked in Ukraine as well, is this very particular targeting of the healthcare workers. I think that's really, really something I haven't seen before in this nature, where if my own colleagues would explain, as they were moving from north to south across Netzarim, you're filtered, and if there were any medical paraphernalia or sign that you're a medical worker, say wearing your scrubs, you'd be picked out and taken. And the particular attention paid to torture, simulations of death, I won't describe, to genitalia, really a systematic targeting of healthcare workers who, as I've said, are still detained to this day. And let me just explain, my colleague Aboud, the head of our physiotherapy service in Gaza, specialist in burns and trauma rehabilitation and occupational therapy. I worked with him day in, day out for 2 months. He was killed in a drone strike just 6 days before this last ceasefire, and that was a drone strike that happened with a notified movement in an MSF convoy of MSF staff going to MSF work. And of course, the Israelis said there was a Hamas operative in the vicinity. He had 18 years of experience. He was a trainer of the trainers. He trained our staff in Yemen and our staff in Syria. He's gone forever, let alone his family left behind. So to bring back healthcare workers, another example, trauma and reconstructive surgery, but just to say, this is not a speciality that you can really train in within Gaza. Dr. Hamdan, healthcare workers were attacked in their homes, specifically targeted. So this is something I've not seen in the other conflicts in which I've worked, but of course attacks on healthcare are seen in conflict, and it's unacceptable.
Thank you for the question. Complicity? Yes. The point about my presentation was to show you the overwhelming amount of documentation from week to week that has been presented to the world audience, including all the ministries of foreign affairs in Europe. I'm a white European. I still struggle with my colonized mind. But the response from all these white colonial powers, pre-colonial and colonial powers in Europe, has been to completely silence the facts on the ground. Now, we have been discussing for 80 years the complicity of Holocaust. Yet, at the time of Holocaust, the flow of information was much more meager than it was today. Still, we are complaining and accusing those then in power for turning the blind eye and turning a deaf ear to what they pretty much knew what was going on in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the European countries and in the United States. And in 46, 47, when the Genocide Convention was established, the slogan was, never again. And here we go, again. And never again means never again for everyone. And the deep-rooted fundamental problem pertaining to your question about sadism is that all these Western governments and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Development and what have you, when they are allowing 600 Palestinian children to be killed for each one of the 33 Israeli children killed on the 7th of October, which is completely condemnable, but the ratio is such an affront to any decent human being because that ratio is based on one single quality, and that is racism. So the reason why all these Ministers of Foreign Affairs in Europe are not reacting to all the facts that came pouring in from the neutral bodies of the UN, the science, the publication of peer-reviewed papers all over, is a deep-rooted racism. That's why I put in one of my slides that Palestinian children can expect to live 35 plus 9 years shorter than an Israeli child. And God forbid, what would have happened if an enemy of Israel had killed 28 Jewish children every day for more than 700 days, which Israel has done in Gaza? 28 children on an average for more than 700 days. It would have been an outcry. It would have been stopped, full stop. And the difference has one overruling headline, and it's racism and colonial racism. So everybody in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Europe who have been sitting idle and reading this report without standing up, every medical community in my country, in the US, all over the world, who have known all this and have been appealed again and again from people supporting the Palestinian justice and yet kept shut, are complicit. And they need to face trial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our speakers for this extremely important subject and topic. Yes, Gwen, please.
I want to add just one very brief additional comment in relation to the question of sadism, because sadism is not an intrinsic quality of any people or any person. It has to be related to the lack of any boundaries whatsoever on behavior. So when we think about sadism, whether we think about domestic abuse or abuse on this scale, if we speak about no consequences for an action, then sadism, brutality, and abuse can flourish. There's nothing to stop it. And in fact, the more it flourishes, the more it happens, because it goes into a runaway. And the people who resist, all the brave doctors of Gaza, are partly being targeted because of their bravery, because of their heroism, because of their resistance, and because of their morality. So I think we need to really hold on to the absolute relationship between sadism and impunity. Thank you.